that advocates for the use of AI across all sectors, and funded by MN Research. So the program is basically brought to you through the two organizations that are in collaboration to bring awareness to issues relating to AI. Colleagues from MNG, can you please assist me with muting these their voices that are coming through? All right, thank you so much. That has been taken care of. So my name is Dr. Moringa, like I've said, founding member of the AfriLeaders AI, an organization that is bringing these programs to you. So like I said, we're going to be having a series of workshops every Saturday running from 10 to 11 until the end of the year, focusing on all areas of research, the research cycle, but implementing AI and doing practical demonstrations of using AI ethically at whatever stage of your research you would be. So basically, my background involving participating in the development of the UKZN AI framework in the past 2 years, and former member of the UKZN AI task force. That role in that institution and other institution, I've been involved in advising deans and academic leaders on ethical use of AI, involving decisions whether there is use or overuse of AI, and whether a student must be passed, the thesis must be passed or sent for re-examination or for editing, or the student must redo the work. So I've been involved in that work for the past 2 years. And I thought it is very necessary for us to have a conversation around those things as we begin the year. I understand some of us are starting with their proposals, some of us are starting with their work. So we'll be talking through those so that we can bring each other to speed in terms of ethical use of AI. So over the past 2 years, we have conducted through AfriLeaders in AI in collaboration with MNG Research, we've trained over 600 academics and researchers on the ethical use of AI. You proposal development, your thesis development, your literature reviews, your methodologies, your journal articles, manuscript development. We've done all that work implementing different tools, AI tools for writing in every stage of your research project. So current work right now, like I said, I'm a founding member of AfriLeaders AI. We are training researchers throughout the country and throughout the African continent to ethically use AI in their research. We also advocate and advise academic leaders and the management, investment management, in terms of use of AI and implementation of AI within the higher education space and different sectors. So our offices are based in Durban. If you want to contact us, you will provide you with our information. So this session is going to run for an hour. The first 30 to 45 minutes, I'm going to do a presentation. Then we open up conversations around whatever issues that we would have discussed in this process. Right, I want us to collaborate in terms of maintaining order and not muting and unmuting, so that we can not disturb the flow of the presentation. Right, whatever you don't agree with, or whatever you agree with or you want to buttress, you can use the comment section. We have teams at MNG in Durban who will be reading out those comments for us, and we can address them as we go. I want to reiterate that we'll be doing this every Saturday, and we'll be developing the thesis or the dissertation every week of the month, right? Doing practical demonstration, but we're starting with ethics, right? Today, that's the first session of the series that will run throughout the year. So we are broadcasting both online, on YouTube, and we are broadcasting on Facebook and on Instagram, so you can participate from those aspects. All right. So first things first, let's talk about what has been happening and where we are currently in terms of AI adoption in academia. All right. So with the buzz of AI, your generative AI, ChatGPT 2022 in November, that was the release, and the graph shown on the screen, it shows you what has been happening, right? And research has been done to support this graph. So it was released in 2022 November, and a few people, like whenever there is a technology that has been released, few people would tend to use the early adopters, want to see how it works and try it out in different areas, right? And when those early adopters and the early use has seen what it works, they started to talk about it late 2022, early 2023, right? Then the most part of 2023, we've been talking about ethical debates and resistance. I remember at an institution where I was working on, I introduced that, there's this whole ChatGPT and other platforms. There was a lot of resistance. I couldn't even open my laptop to use ChatGPT because there was this whole negative aspect about it. So there was a resistance, within the higher education space amongst researchers. There was the stigma around the use of AI, but early adopters would have already identified that this would transform their lives in research space. So moving on to 2023, late 2023, moving in 2024, that's university studies to talk about issues of policy, because now they are warming up to realize that actually generative AI is not going anywhere, and we need to look at and see what we can do about it. Even though we are complaining that our students are using it, we're not going to stop them to use it because ChatGPT is free. DeepSeek is free and other platforms are free, right? So now it exposed the academic, it exposed the educator themselves, because they aren't prepared and the student is prepared. Right? There's a mismatch there now that the student is coming, they know the technology, and educator or the supervisor doesn't know the technology. So now that necessitated issues around policy, and but I must say that the issues of policy and the policy that were developed during that period of time around 2022, I remember the DUT policy. There was no policy there. They took the plagiarism policy that they have, and they inserted a line in red to say AI should be regarded as plagiarism. And it's said to say that the people who did that, I mean, they didn't know what generative AI do. They didn't know what generative AI can do, and the functionalities that the platform would bring, and those affordances that those platforms would provide for them. So what we saw during the 2024 and the most part of 2023 and 2024 was a reactionary approach from most researchers, from academics, from management, from the ethics committee. They are reactionary because they were hit by a storm, like what happens normally in Africa. We are always surprised when something happens. And after that something has happened, we want to play catch up. And this is where we are now. But 2025 and 2026, most part of it, we saw issues of policy engagement. Universities, I know University of KwaZulu-Natal, they adopted a framework in 2021, 2025, early 2025 in February. Your UCT, your Stellenbosch, right? But I should say that there is no yet concrete policies yet that has come. But the progress is commendable, and is and good that we're moving, and universities are moving from being reactionary to actually being progressive, and that most of the policies that are there now are not punitive in nature, but they actually are advancing the use of AI, right? But the challenge that we have is that despite the policies that we have right now in 2026, starting in 2026, and what we observed, especially in late 2025 with the submissions of theses and dissertations was the attitudes of the academics, in fact, our senior colleagues within the academic space. They tend to penalize students. They tend to be not open-minded enough to accept that the technologies has been used. I mean, I'll talk about it and how it has been used. So students' work has been sent back. You write your literature review, then the supervisor suspects that there's AI being used just because of the terminology that you use, just because of this American dash in your work. Then they send and discard your work. This such work, such kind of reactions, must say they're retrogressive. I mean, considering that the AI policies that are there, they are progressive. They are not punitive in nature, but it's just that they focus on issues of you want to disclose, right? We'll focus on all those things. So moving on, let's basically look at what has been happening in the academic space, in the research space, right? There's a study conducted by Elsevier, right, into late 2025, and it identified that there's actually an increased use of AI tools, right, amongst researchers. They did a study with 3,000 researchers across the world. So there's a difference between 2024 and 2025, and there is a 37% increase in the use of AI tools, right? And the one thing that most people or most researchers have said about the use of AI is that it saves time, right? And it helps them to save time, where 61% of them are using it for research summaries and 51% are using it for literature review. So basically what it means is that there's an increased use of these tools in areas of literature review. The researchers are not finding any need for them to do traditional ways of getting to familiarize themselves with the literature review. Rather, they actually basically running that literature on different platforms, your PDF readers, your PDF chat, etc., etc. So there's also said that 60% of the researchers in China report AI improves their work quality. I mean, this demystifies issues of that AI doesn't, it hallucinates, it causes problems and stuff like that. Key debates that are genuine, of course, are from most scholars and researchers, but research findings are actually proving that, it actually improves the quality of work. And only 23% believe AI tools are ethically developed, raising concerns about reliability. And this is a huge concern. I mean, in terms of issues of biases, hallucination, fake citations. So there's still an issue of not trusting the AI tools enough, and those issues are really genuine, because these issues happen. Hallucinations happen, fake citations happen, right? But we'll talk about avoiding all those things in our sessions. I mean, one of the sessions that we have is prompting for effective output, right? We have those sessions. I think you need to keep a look at the flyer when it comes out, right? Researchers seek transparency, recency, and safety in AI tools to build that they become better. So they say they need to be more transparent, and they need to have recent information that they provide. I think they've made considerable work and progress in that regard. Right, so there are regional differences where 64% of Chinese researchers feel empowered by AI compared to the US, and statistics in Africa are they are ambivalent, where they differ as to at what stage of your research career you are, whereas early career scholars are more afraid of using these tools because they're afraid to tarnish their academic integrity, and your senior colleagues are actually saying no, 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 and more use is amongst those who are coming from your masters and honors researchers. And those are those who have increasingly been seen to use. That's a statistic from Africa. So only 32% of researchers feel that their institutions have strong AI governance and adequate training. The study that we did last year that is published it actually shows that there is an ad hoc use, and students and researchers are using it from, and they are self-regulating their use of AI because the policies that are there, the frameworks that are in existence are somewhat vague because they do not actually state as to what should be done and what should not be done. They just emphasize the term ethical use. And this session will actually try to get to the bottom of what should be done in postgraduate research or journal articles and what you shouldn't do, and regulating the relationship between the supervisor and the student when there's issues, ethical issues surrounding AI use. Right. So let's acknowledge, we need to acknowledge the shortfalls of generative AI in academia, because if we do not do that, we're doing an injustice to ourselves. So they actually produce inaccuracies in AI generative content. They are there. The accuracies are there. The also issue of lack of contextual understanding, that emanates from bias in AI algorithms, plagiarism risk, content that is can be unintentionally plagiarized. In data privacy concern, AI system rely on vast data set, including potentially sensitive data. And there's an issue of reliance and over reliance, and I'll talk about it a little bit to demystify it, because some researchers say, how then do we say this is reliance and this is over reliance, right? And this is AI content and AI assisted content. We're going to demystify that in a student supervisor relationship as we proceed, right? Questionable authorship, right? Issues of questionable authorship will also answer that one, but defining authorship and responsibility when AI is involved is very important, right? And AI cannot be listed as a co-author, right? Ethical dilemmas in issue, balancing innovation with maintaining academic standards issues are also some of the shortfalls of AI, of Gen AI in postgraduate research and in journal publications. Right. So, but now the question is, what does it mean to be ethical in AI research? Right. There are key pillars that researchers proved. They say you need to be honest, um, and you need to be transparent. You need to be accountable. In your in research practices, but the complexity of using AI tools has always been, where do we draw the line, right? When we're looking at your Turnitin, for example, when we're talking about plagiarism, we talk about a 15% cap, we talk about a 20% cap to say if there's a 20% detection of AI, then of similarity index, right? Then this work must be edited or this work must be sent back, right? But the same cannot be applied to AI tools, right? The same cannot be applied to AI tools. That's why you see um, universities, journal articles, they've actually discarded that concept. Oh, there's no policy. I've reviewed most university policies and frameworks. I've not seen a section where there is a cap to say they should be 15%, right? I'm not sure if other universities they are updated. I know the UK is in policy. I know UCT. I know, right, UJ. There's no really cap to say there's 15% and stuff like that. So being ethical in usage of AI means there needs to be a full disclosure of the role of AI in your data collection, your analysis, and content generation, right? That you need to ensure that in every information that you generated there is verified and accurate. You also need to make sure that AI ensures that the system do not compromise personal academic data, for example, fabrication of your data that you would have uploaded. Right. So we basically need to say, what we're simply saying is that we need to adhere to establish ethical standards in academic research. Journals and universities have come up with these, right? And we need to familiarize ourselves. And I'm going to take you through some of these, of prominent universities in South Africa and our key journals that and what they say about AI tools, right? So we basically saying AI should enhance rather than replace the human intellectual engagement, right? So in South Africa, we have a South African national AI policy, right? That's where we are all drawing on from, right, in to inform our university policies and what we do with our policies. So it's a good thing that the policy is actually progressive in nature, because it acknowledges the importance and the fundamental role of AI tools, right? So with that said, it allows us to navigate and work through those tools, right? So it's saying here to us that the policy says AI must not replace human intellectual work. That's the entry point of the policy, right? But our key issue with this policy, or what we are drawing on from this policy, is that it allows us to use AI in whatever breadth and length that we can use, right? But the key word is ethical use, and other key word is that human intellectual work should not be replaced, right? And researchers are therefore now responsible for verifying the AI generated content, right? So issue is about in the human aspect, uh, the disclosure and the verification of that work that which have been released, right? And it says that in our use, we need to make sure that we comply with your Copy Act, right? And it advocates for universities and institutions to monitor the use of AI so that the users comply with the policies and regulations within the different spaces. Right. So now, what is happening in the South African universities, whatever universities that you might come from, right? I'll speak from the universities that I'm familiar with and what we've done in those various universities, right? So there is a shift, like I've shown on the graph that I presented. I say that there is a shift in universities. They are moving away from being reactive, right, to actually being progressive. And we're seeing this by the development or inclusion of your policies, right? They're coming up with policies, they're coming up with frameworks, right? And now they're focusing on formal ethical policies that balance integrity and innovation. For example, I would tell you that the UKZN policy is one of the most progressive policies that I've seen, because it removes the aspect of, punitive aspect, for example, that we see in the plagiarism policy, to actually acknowledge that these technologies are actually fundamental in the enhancement of new knowledge and new methodologies, right? And so in that aspect, it says, it acknowledges that use it, right? But when you use it, develop a declaration, or develop a a form, or a report of how you've used it, right? So that we can use that, or other students or other researchers can follow and replicate the methodologies that you've used, the prompts, the commands, and the outputs and stuff like that within your field of study, so that we can actually develop new methodologies and new knowledge in that space. So that's being progressive, right? And Northwest has also adopted in the policy and focusing on human-centered teaching and research and sustainability. The Stellenbosch University, it promotes authenticity, fairness, accountability, and transparent use in AI. And they discontinued Turnitin use as a detection tool, right, due to unreliability concerns, right? I mean, Turnitin, we've proved it again and again that Turnitin doesn't work. So we'll talk about it when we're talking about the student supervisor relationships and the things that we've seen over the past 2 years, right? Actually, people failing because of Turnitin, right? The University of Witwatersrand, this emphasizes AI tool disclosure and requires diverse data sets to avoid biases in research. The University of South Africa also has a checklist of AI that ensures responsible use, stating AI cannot be credited as others. UKZN, I've already mentioned, they have a transformative tool policy that they have. then universities. So the core principle, basically, what we are getting from the universities in South Africa is that the emphasis on disclosure, human accountability, equity in AI use, and POPI compliance. All right. So they're not saying do not use AI. And I love the UK's policy because there is a section in the policy that says if the educator or the lecturer or the supervisor doesn't want their students to use AI, the responsibility or the burden lies on the one who bans the AI, the one who forbids, is the one who should prove why the tools should not be used, right? So, in an event that there is a educator, lecturer who is discouraging that thing, the use of AI within that space, right? They need to be engaged because the policy actually says if you don't want your students to use the tools, you need to write a pedagogical motivation why they should not use it. So it's you who is supposed to prove, as the educator, as the supervisor, why you should not not the students to prove why they've used it, right? It's the one who bans who has a burden of proof. So that should be clarified, right? So the issues are about disclosure, disclose, right? Human accountability, equity, and POPI Act, right? Needs to adhere to those, right? So institutions are developing AI governance hubs, to trying to have, I know UJ has come up with a lot of hubs so far, the centers, the Center for Law, and AI and stuff like that, and working very well. So that's progressive. And so the university landscape in South Africa is very progressive and open to the use of AI. And I think what needs to be done further is actually to educate the educators as to what does it mean to be ethical? What are the boundaries that should be not be crossed? What are the distinction between AI use and AI overuse? Those are the things that are now required. And I think in 2026, we need to see more of training of the educator, train the trainer, right? We need to see more training of the students and to use, to align with those policies. And that's where we come in as Afri leaders. We train, we educate, we advise those who need that kind of services, right? So let's look at the positions of academic journals. This is another issue that most people ask questions. Oh, do I what happens? What is happening? What are the journals saying? What are the journals saying? So journals, I'll tell you that the journals have opened up. They're actually using AI to review our papers, right? To quick script to scan our papers. I tell you that MDPI, Frontiers, some Taylor and Francis, some Elsevier, they actually scan our papers. The first desk reject that you get 2 minutes after you submit, that's an AI tool that scan through your paper and align and see if it aligns with the journal policies and scope and the references and stuff like that. They're actually using it, right? So but the emphasis is on AI should be an assistant, not an author. So you cannot list ChatGPT as an author, right? And emphasize human responsibilities. Authors must verify all AI generated content. So what is interesting is that they're not questioning whether you've generated the content on AI, right? They are questioning, or their worry is, have you verified that which has been generated? Right. If you are confident that you've verified, then they won't have problems with you. Then they are talking about the issues of mandatory disclosure. Journals are saying AI usage must be clearly disclosed in the method sections and acknowledgement or AI declaration. Right. Those are three things that are important. In your methods, explain how you used it, acknowledgement, right? So that's what is out there in terms of AI use in journals, right? The key takeaway is that always disclose AI use to maintain transparency and adhere to journal specific policies. That's what the journals are asking for. So you can generate your content using AI, but you need to know how to generate content. And that's where the issue of prompting comes into place, right? So key one might ask, where should I publish my work if I've used AI, right? I'll tell you that Springer, They have an AI policy that encourages AI use for research advancement, but requires transparency. They say you must disclose. So they don't have a problem with you with your work that you've used AI, MDPI. They support AI use, but they stress verification and attribution. They say disclosure. Elsevier open access, they say use it, but disclose, but don't list ChatGPT as an author. Taylor and Francis accept for language improvements, but not for core research, but must disclose whatever you've used. It Sage writing assistance, but critical analysis must remain human. Disclose, right? Wiley open access, disclose, use it, but disclose. So the fundamental aspects, the fundamental issue, what should be done is disclosure. And that's where most researchers fall short. That's where most students fall short. Disclose, disclose, disclose. You need to disclose. Right. So that's your journal articles or your journal publications. But now, the purpose of this, like I said, of this presentation is we're talking about ethics, ethical issues in postgraduate research and journal articles. So let's, for a bit, move on to key issues that we have experienced. I mean, this will touch on supervisor-student relationship as it pertaineth to AI. What should be regulated? What should the supervisor do? What should the student do? What are the scenarios that we've experienced and how we've resolved them? Right, that's what we want to look at in this particular section. But before we get there, I want us to unpack what the aspect we call the AI generated and the AI assisted dichotomy. Right, there is a debate amongst researchers, amongst students and supervisors. I know senior academics. I know very gatekeepers. They emphasize the issue of saying, use AI, but at least use it to assist what you've already written. Right, that's the key argument. Use it, but use to assist what you've already written. So they will tell you that you need to write your own paper. Then you need to go and edit it, use Grammarly, or you need to fine tune it or restructure things using ChatGPT, but make sure that typing and everything still belongs to you, right? And this, they call it the dichotomy of AI generated and AI assisted, right? But this is problematic, right? The dichotomy is problematic because when distinguishing between AI generated from AI assisted content is nearly impossible because the binary distinction has collapsed into a spectrum of hybrid authorship, right? I'll give you an example, a scenario. You write your own work, you are typing your own work, right? Then you are not a first English speaker or English writer, then you use ChatGPT to fine tune your work, right? And in the process of fine tuning, ChatGPT will actually change some other things, the line structure, the sentence construction, and everything, right? But bear in mind that the ideas and the concepts and the thinking, everything remains yours. Right, it remains yours, everything remains yours. But the construction of sentences now has been done by ChatGPT, right? It is fine-tuned what you've already done. Now, those who advocate for AI assisted work, right, are right in that space. But those who advocate for AI generated work, right, or those who would say NIA, who castigate AI generated work, might be found wondering, why am I saying so? Because what happens in the process of editing your work with Grammarly is that the sentence construction can be altered. Right, the sentence construction can be altered so as when you want to use an AI detection or your supervisor judgment, you can actually miss the point because the work has been improved and enhanced. And in that process, it will be very difficult to distinguish between the original work and the one that has been assisted. So AI generated and AI assisted, the line then falls flat. Right. In 2026, South African universities now, they've actually acknowledged that the tools cannot be reliably differentiate between a student who use AI to polish original work or ideas and one who used to create them. Right. You cannot distinguish that. I mean, I know I was having a conversation with one dean who was faced with a situation to decide whether to fail a thesis that has been sent back by the examiners who've said that they suspect that there is overuse of AI. Right. Then they've pointed out that, the sentence construction, the sentences are too long, right? Then there's an American dash in the sentences, which is not common in African writing, in in British English and stuff like that, and a lot of things that they've listed, right? And the question now was that, what if the student has generated their work through their own writing, right? And they've edited it using a tool, or they've used the tools to assist them. Now, should we still penalize them for AI assisted work? Right, where do we draw the line? And as a result, we've seen universities in South Africa, your UCT, your Stellenbosch, they've discarded all those things. They've discarded the use of AI detectors because they are misleading, right? They are misleading. In fact, they are limiting, to say the least, because they produce what we call false positives. But I'll touch a lot on those tools as we proceed. Right, right. So the reliance on AI assisted and AI generated, it brings to life what we call the polishing trap. I think I've explained a bit about it. So when AI is used to restructure arguments or refine the tone, right, common assisted task, it often alters the text enough to trigger AI generated flags, right, in detection software. So I've already explained that the moment you edit something, or the moment you fine tune something using any AI tool, it forces your work to fall within the category of AI generated, right? Despite the fact that you yourself has created the work yourself, right? So we are saying now penalizing a student using that dichotomy, the distinction of saying I prefer AI assisted work as to AI generated as a supervisor or as an academic or as a lecturer. You actually are missing the point, because the process of fine tuning the work pushes the work to fall into the category of AI generated text. Right. So this effectively punishes students. Often non-native English speakers are the one who fall trap, right? Bringing in the issue of the digital divide in AI, right? So they need, what should we do then? We'll see the answer. Another issue that we've also seen over the years is the hybrid text problem, right? So the distinction between AI assisted, or those who prefer AI assisted, or AI generated, the distinction relies on process, not on product, right? Making it invisible to outside observers. So, you're blurring workflows. So, for example, a scenario, a student may write a rough draft and use AI to fix grammar, right? This AI assisted, while another prompts AI to write an essay and then manually edits 30% of the text AI generated. The final output have identical statistical signatures, making it impossible for softwares to tell who performed the intellectual labor. Right. So we have one student who have written their work, and they used a tool to fine tune it. Then we have another one who prompted the tool to produce the whole essay, but they've now edited it to humanize it. Right, these students, they fall on the same lane, right? They are falling on the same category because they've all used what we regard to as human judgment has been used in this work, which is the fundamental aspect in AI use and in AI research. So this we call the hybrid text problem, right? But supervisors have been struggling with this. Academic leaders have been struggling is to make judgment as to how do we navigate through this, right? And we are saying we should not focus on the process, right? Let's focus on the product. If the product meets ethical guidelines, if the product is making sense, require or request for the processes that have been done, not to penalize the process, not to penalize the assisted process or the prompted process. What you need to look at is human judgment has been used, right? That's the hybrid text problem. The case in point, one case in point that we have seen recently was a student uses AI tools to generate ideas for their thesis, but does not credit the AI tool, right? Now, the supervisor picked it up and noticed that the writing style is inconsistent with the student's usual work, right? What then do we do? Do we discard the work? Should the student be penalized? Should the student be called for disciplinary hearing? But there are ways to avoid this. There are ways to make sure that we can have solutions. For example, the ethical solution in this particular case will be that the student needs to acknowledge the use of AI in both research process and the final product. They need to acknowledge that in my introduction, this is what I've done. In my literature review, this is what I've done. These are the tools that I've used. These are the platforms that I've used. This is the version that I've used. So in this case, particular case, in this scenario, what we're saying is that proper attribution is essential to avoid plagiarism and maintain academic honesty. So we're saying, drawing on the policies, the university policies that we have, there is no need or urgent need to punish the student like what we've been seeing lately, especially in 2024 and 2025, punishing students, right? The issue should center around proper attribution. The issue should center around acknowledgement of the use of AI that has been used in the research process, not punishment, right? Because the policies allows the student to use. The policies allow the student to develop their work with these technologies, right? So AI detectors and in the supervision process, are they really ethical? That's a key question. I know for a fact that I know a colleague in one university that I was having a conversation with. They said, my students are so much using AI and I'm fed up. One of the assessment that I had to fail all of them and give them to redo the work. And I was sitting there, I was listening to this, to the colleague going on and getting angry, and I don't know what I should do. And I was asked, and then I had to ask them, how did you get to identify that the students are using AI and they are using it and their work is replete with AI? Then the colleague said, I use tools to pick that work up, you know. Then I'm thinking the colleague is mad at the unethical use of AI by the student, but the act of uploading the student work on these tools is in itself unethical, right? The colleague themselves, in as much as they are angry at an ethical student, they are conducting an ethical act to mitigate an unethical act, right? So what does that mean? We are saying AI detectors are not really ethical in themselves, right? And there are conditions to that. We were going to substantiate that. We're saying AI detectors, they can be used, and colleagues are using them to identify AI generated content and maintain academic integrity. They are used to detect and to flag genuine student work as AI generated, right? And they cause doubts as to students are doing the actual work. But these detectors, they mistakenly label human written text as AI generated, leading to unfair penalties. Right, I know at one university I was advising the dean after they had said we are going to fail the student, the master student, because the examiners have uploaded the work on an AI platform, and this is the report that they've sent. They sent the QBot report, and I'm not sure, I don't remember the other report that they've sent to say this is 65% of AI. 65% of AI detected on Turnitin and on Qbot. Then the question was there an agreement of uploading this thesis or dissertation on these platforms? Because the process of uploading this dissertation on this platform, you are uploading the students' findings and intellectual property without their consent, right? And again, many detectors are black box systems. They're making it unclear how decisions are made without human review, right? So excessive use of AI detectors can reduce the importance of human judgment and mentorship in supervising students, right? So they have fallacies, they have mistakes, and to actually penalize or to actually reach a judgment based on the AI detectors, I think it's very, very, it needs to be treated with caution. I know UCT banned your Stellenbosch banned Turnitin. They now say you need to make sure that there's disclosure and there's of disclosure and transparency in the use of AI, right? So detectors may require uploading students' work to external platforms. Now, this, as I've said, it risks data privacy and intellectual property. And I think, and I want to emphasize, if doing this, I think it's unfair for a student, or for a master's student or a PhD student to upload their work on any platform without their consent, because you are already putting their findings there. You're putting their work out there, because the platforms, the AI platforms, they use that data to provide solutions to other people who would have prompted. So use of AI detectors can strain the student-supervisor relationships, causing students to feel mistrusted. I know this for a fact. I feel that when I've disclosed that this is what I've done, and if somebody still wants to go and upload my work on a different platform, but yet I've disclosed that this is what I've done, I think this brings in the issue of ethic, of trust and mistrust between the student and the supervisor. Right. So the ethical solution is that AI detectors should not be 100% relied on, but they should complement, maybe, right, provided that ethics ethical guidelines are followed through. They should not replace the supervisor's role in checking and reading and thoroughly reviewing the student work, right? So the key scenarios, I'm going to give you a key scenario about AI generated content without disclosure. One issue that we've seen, right? The ethical issue is that there is a student who uses an AI tool, for example, ChatGPT, to generate sections of their research paper, but does not disclose this in the manuscript or in the paper, right? This is an ethical concern, right? This is an ethical concern because you shouldn't submit your work without the disclosure form, right? The student must acknowledge AI tools usage in the methods section, right? Or any other section or in the acknowledgement section, right? So the supervisor needs, if they pick that up, they need to send to request the disclosure from the student. That's the first thing they need to do. Disclose what you've done, disclose how you used it, write a report, attach an addendum of how you used it, right? So this is how to deal with these problems. Another one is an over-reliance on AI for data analysis. This is a problem, right? AI tools, they actually mislead, right? They can fabricate the results, they can fabricate verbatims, right? So there's a student who relies entirely on AI to analyze research data without validating the results or cross-checking them with human judgment. This is an ethical dilemma. This is an ethical problem. You should never not validate the results. You should never cross-check what has been produced. Human judgment is key. The solution here is that we need human oversight. While the tools can assist in data analysis, the student need to verify the output. They need to ensure the results align with research objectives and maintain academic integrity. I know of a student who ran the their data table, they're interpreting their table, SPSS tables on ChatGPT, and they cumulative, when you calculate everything, was going to 120%, 115%, right? And they didn't verify that they relied exclusively on the calculations. I know ChatGPT misses the numbers. I know ChatGPT misses the numbers. That's a very one. So student and supervisors, they actually need to verify that information, the analysis and stuff like that. Another scenario is using AI for literature reviews without proper citations. Hallucinations of citations. A student can use AI to summarize recent search articles for a literature review, but fails to properly cite the AI generated summaries for the original source. The issue is not that you have generated your literature review using AI. The issue is that there are citations that are missing. The issue is that they are fabricated sources, right? And that needs to be verified before you leave that work to go to the next person. So we need to do proper citation, verify all authors, verify all citations, and verify all that information. AI generated content must be clearly referenced, and students should ensure that any AI generated summaries include appropriate citations to the original text. Right, so supervisor uses AI detectors without prior agreement. This is a big one. This is a huge one. I mean, I know, because supervisors are in the position of power, they tend to do whatever they want to. I know I was dealing with one student from a university, and they came for advice. They said, I submitted my literature review to a supervisor, and I acknowledged the sources are everything. I verified everything, and everything is good, and everything. There's nothing there that um, uh, was misleading, right? Then my supervisor went on to submit my work and upload my work on a platform uh, that checks Zotero, that checks a lot of things, right? And that is powered by a prominent university in America, right? And that's his basis for arguing that what he did is right. And I told the student that your supervisor is in the wrong, because initially the two of you do not have an agreement to say, these are the tools that I'm going to use, or these are the tools that we'll use to verify if whether AI has been used. Because the problem is, work that can be uploaded on Intellitin can pick up higher percentage of AI, whereas if we put it on Qbot, it can pick up a lower percentage. So in that scenario, if your student brings the Qbot report, which is 0%, and the supervisor brings in the Tennyton report, which is 50%, and there is no agreement here, and the policy of the university doesn't agree to both of these, right? Then that becomes a dilemma, right? And so how do we resolve this? The supervisor should discuss and agree on AI tools usage with the student beforehand. There should be an agreement, supervisor student agreement, in the first meeting, that ensure that both are clear on how AI tools will be applied and how results will be reviewed. You cannot come up and say, no, this is what I've done, and go and redo your literature review when you do not have a prior agreement with the student. That is unacceptable. Right. Regulating student and supervisor relationship in AI use. What needs to be done is that the student must disclose AI tools used and its contribution when they submit their work, when they submit their chapter, when they submit their proposal. When disclosure is done, right, there must be an agreement between the student in the start of the research project. AI content, there must be oversight. AI content must be reviewed by both student and supervisor. Then they should ensure that AI tools are used ethically and maintaining integrity. And transparency. AI role should be documented in the research output. I know, by transparent, by documenting, when I write, I generate my tables using ChatGPT. Under the table, I write that this table has been generated using ChatGPT version 5.2. Right. When I paraphrase my literature review with ChatGPT, or or your or your Grammarly, I disclose all that this is what I've done. I disclose this is what I've done. So this is it. Now let's move on to ethical concern as it pertaineth to key issues in journal publication. When we are publishing journals, what are the key ethical concerns that are involved? What should we consider? What should we consider? Sorry about that. What should we consider? What are the key specific concern? What are the journals looking for? What can be penalized? What can be retracted? What should we do and what should we not do? Right. So AI generated plagiarism. A researcher uses AI to generate parts of a manuscript without proper citations, leading to potential plagiarism. The solution in this particular case, researchers must always disclose the use of AI tools and ensure that proper attribution in the manuscript to maintain transparency and academic integrity. That's what the journals are looking for. Proper attribution of sources and transparency as to what has been done and how it has been done. That's what the journals are looking for. They don't penalize you for producing a manuscript. I know platforms that are, in one of our sessions would do practicals of generating a manuscript on AI, demonstrating the unethical aspect and demonstrating the ethical aspect in one of our sessions in one of the Saturdays coming. So that's what the journals are looking for. They are not punitive, right? There's no restriction. The only restriction, or what they're asking for, is that you need to disclose. You need to do proper or due diligence, right? When you write in your manuscript, cite, disclose, and declare. That's what they're looking for, right? A scenario, again, another scenario that we've come across, AI tools assist in writing significant portions of the paper, raising questions about whether AI should be credited as an author, right? So AI should just be acknowledged as assistance, right? Journals, they don't want you to list a ChatGPT as an co-author, right? Only human contributors who meet the criteria for authorship should be credited, but you need to disclose that the large portion of this paper was generated using this tool. And why has it happened? I have not seen anybody who has been penalized after they've done such a disclosure, right? And so this again brings the issue of saying what is reliance and over reliance, which is subjective. If we are to say, but if you disclose, right, I think some editors will tell you that this might be over reliance. I think you need to go and paraphrase some of the sections of your work. Right, so AI-driven bias. An AI tool used for content generation or peer review introduces unintended biases affecting the objectivity of the published work. We all know that the tools normally follow the kind of thinking from which they are programmed or they developed. Right, and this issue brings in the issues of biases. I do some studies relating to feminism and gender. You'd see more often than not. That the tools tend to give you biased outcomes as to issues of gender, as to issues of things like LGBTQ and stuff like that, right? So they tend to give those bias, and it's very important for one to actually reduce those biases and say verify that information before you cascade it for publication, right? Data fabrication and AI manipulation. Researchers use AI to manipulate or fabricate data, leading to unethical results. There's a disclosure. You need to make sure that your results has not been altered. If you run your results on AI tools, researchers must validate AI-generated data and adhere to ethical standards for data collection and reporting, ensure results are truthful and ethical. Right. Lack of disclosure. An author uses AI tools for writing or analysis, but fails to disclose their use in the manuscript. This is problematic. You must always disclose, right? Then another issue is the peer review. AI assists in peer review, but there is no transparent about decisions are made, potentially leading to unfair assessment. It's not good to upload somebody's manuscript if you're a reviewer on an AI tool. It's not advised because you are giving somebody's data to the tools, right? Failing to disclosure will lead to a number of issues. Lack of academic integrity. If you fail to disclose your work, it leads to issues of academic integrity, loss of academic integrity. Your university might charge you for plagiarism, not attributing AI content. Can result in accusation of plagiarism. Your manuscript might be rejected. It might be a damage to your reputation. As a researcher, you can suffer reputational harm if found violating. That is only if you do not disclose and somebody has found out that this whole manuscript was generated using AI tools. Then the legal and ethical considerations or consequences are also applied. You can be sanctioned academically, where breaches may lead to disciplinary actions by universities, or including suspension or expulsion, right? Impact on peer review process. Failure to disclose AI use may compromise the integrity of the peer review process. Right. So in closing, when you are a student and you do not disclose, right? Failure to disclose AI use, it violates the principle of academic honesty, and it compromises your dissertation, right? You might be charged for plagiarism allegations. Your dissertation might be rejected if you do not disclose, right? Not if you used AI. If you do not disclose, loss of degree, or you can lose those credits, or you can fail that module. Disciplinary action can be done against you, reputational damage, and damage to student-supervisor relationship. And the key takeaway is that always disclose AI use in dissertations to maintain academic integrity and avoid penalties and uphold standards within the academic space. Right. So the question is how to disclose AI use in research. Example of a disclosure statement would be this paper used AI tools, then your name and the specific version. For language improvement, brainstorming, data analysis, the tool was used to assist with the brief description of the task, e.g., generating initial ideas, refining language, suggesting ideas, but all content was reviewed and verified for accuracy by the author. The AI tools did not contribute to the intellectual content or conclusion of the research, and human judgment always prevail. Right. Where to disclose? You need to disclose in the method section. You need to have your, in your acknowledgement section, make sure you mention the tools and their versions and when they were used. AI declaration section, what to include the name of the tool, the version of the tool, specify whether it was for language enhancement, data analysis, brainstorming, or what, and specify what is being used for, but make sure the version is there. Right. That's the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to open now to questions, a brief, short question section. I know we've gone beyond time. We just need to have a short engagement so that we can know what we've been presenting is if it has by any chance touched you in any way and improved your knowledge. Right. Thank you so much. I'm Dr. Muringa, live from Durban, brought to you by AfriLeader in AI in collaboration with M&G Research. Right. Just a short questions and answers that we're going to take. There's a question here that's coming. It says, my biggest worry was on journal publishers from Stelomsong, right? Your biggest problem was on journal publishers I'm not sure what the problem is, but there's another one. It says Turnitin is problematic because sometimes even the sequence of your own name, the topic of your study and government and documents such as NDP, what, and others are detected as plagiarism. What is the solution for this challenge? Right. What is the solution for this challenge? Right. So we're saying we need to make sure always of the distinction between AI, Turnitin used for AI, and Turnitin used for plagiarism, right? Turnitin used for AI, we're saying we know for a fact, that Turnitin is not a good platform to detect AI, right? And other platforms as well. So we shouldn't rely on it. We should not rely on it. That's why universities, I know UKZN, I know I know Stellenbosch, I know UCT, they've already said don't bring the report here that says you have that indicates Turnitin detection of AI. So, but when it comes to your similarity index, right, it's still a problem because Turnitin, it simply follows the sequence of words. I know I normally work around and play around the settings on Turnitin, right, to increase the number of sequence of words that could be detected for similarities, either 15, 20, and stuff like that, and then that reduces. So these things are not so much accurate, right? But it's a baseline for us to rely on, so to have an indication of what should be done and what we can use, right? Another one says in Zotero GPT, a reliable AI. Is Zotero GTP a reliable AI detector? My lecturer used this tool, which I found concerning, as it has been shown to be unreliable and to generate a significant number of false positives. That's not, I mean, there's no reliable AI detector, right? And it's always good. The challenge we have with students is that student and supervisor relationship is that the supervisor assumes the position of power over the student, right? And the student is in a position of, I want to complete my study, so therefore I follow through what the supervisor is telling me to do. But in actual fact, if your supervisor uploads your work on Zotero ChatGPT without your consent, the supervisor is in breach of ethics of a policy, of the university policy, and that should be engaged. The supervisor must be engaged, right? Because the university policy doesn't acknowledge the use of AI tools, AI detection tools. So they have no basis for uploading your work on any AI detector, right? Unless you've agreed. Like I said, there should be a supervisor-student agreement. Right. Another one says, thank you for the amazing presentation, Dr. Muringa. Considering the hybrid problem you discussed earlier, how does one prove AI assistance rather than full AI use when AI detector tool labels the work as AI generated, right, from Selena? Right, it's a problem. You cannot prove by beyond, I don't know, beyond any reasonable doubt. What we can simply do is to say, as a form of having an idea of what the student has done, right? Let's use this tool that we will use between me, the student, and the supervisor to regulate over usage, right? And after we have uploaded the work, we must also bring in human judgment, right? But what I normally say and what I normally do is that everything that I do on ChatGPT, right, I keep a track, a score of it. I keep a record of it, right? If I develop an introduction of a manuscript on ChatGPT, right, I keep those prompts that I've used and I put them on the side, right? If I develop my literature review on ChatGPT, I keep the prompts and the outcomes, right, on the side. So I have the fine manuscript and I have the prompts and the outputs that I have there, so that if somebody questions what I've done, I can provide them that this is my original work, this is the assisted process, and this is the final output. I think that's the level we need to get to, instead of just punishing to say this is what you've done, punishing the process, right, the final product. If you can prove that I had my ideas, I have my my bullet points that I've put, my commands that I've put on ChatGPT, and this is what ChatGPT has produced for me, and these are the iterations that I've done, and this is the final output. There is no one who has any basis or legal basis to question the final product, even if the AI detection tool detects 100% of the work, because there has been an assisted process that I followed through the whole process. So that's the level we need to get to. I'm against the idea of simply punishing, and I know that the academic space is very toxic. It's a matter of always, you did something wrong, unethical, integrity, let's punish you. But we are saying let's move away from those aspects of simply wanting to punish and embrace the affordances and the potentials of these platforms that we have, and that we do not know how much we can get from them. Right. Can you recommend a more friendly AI detector giving the biases and false reports by 1018? Right. You can use your Grammarly. You can use, I mean, UKZN is subscribed to Grammarly. I know that for a fact in other universities. So that will put you that should put you in a safe space, because the university is already subscribed to that platform. Right. In other university, I know other platforms as well that are there. Your QBot, they assist, in on those things, but none of them is 100% accurate and reliable. Um, Good morning, doctor. My quick question: disclosing, acknowledging AI use, won't it affect the outcomes? Mark one gets from the thesis, right? It's so well. If after disclosure, you shouldn't be penalized for what you have used because you have disclosed. That's the transparency that we're talking about. I know that from experience, senior colleagues and people in power normally want to say, oh, there's just too much, you've disclosed a lot, and for that reason I think you only did 50%, therefore I'm punishing you, I'm penalizing you. I'm saying the policies that we have in the landscape, the South African landscape, none of them talks about penalizing, right? The emphasis is that about disclose, transparency, and academic integrity and human judgment. That's what they are emphasizing on. So if you're having a problem with the supervisor who wants to penalize you or the examiner who wants to penalize you, you can win the case. You can take the case further to say, this is what the policy is saying. I've disclosed, and this is what I've done. These are my prompts. These are the outcomes, and this is what I've got from this work. So there is no really grounds for somebody to penalize you or deduct marks from your work simply because you have disclosed your work. Because if you are penalizing me for disclosing, then you are making me not want to disclose, and you are forcing me into breaching the policy, right? You are actually encouraging me to breach the policy. Right. So I hope that is answered. So another comment says, since AI is full of loopholes and errors, such as fabrications of verbatim quotes, attributing wrong citations to ideas, would that qualify as a sufficient pedagogical reason for banning use of AI? Right. I don't think so. I want to tell you that in as much as AI are full of loopholes, so are human beings full of loopholes. How many assessments have been submitted before AI came that were full of fake verbatims? How many times the students attributed wrong sources to the essay on the essays before the use of AI, right? We didn't ban those students from school, right? How many times have we sat down with a student who have the quotation marks that are not true in their assignment, in their thesis? How many times have human beings fabricated data, right, way before AI? And I'll tell you that in nature and by nature, and human beings have a long history of cheating, right? Human beings have a long history of cutting corners, right? But we never banned the human race. We never said this human being this head must be cut off, right? Because they've cheated. What we're saying is that let's use them ethically. Let's use them in a way that enhances our work in an ethical way. You cannot ban a tool because a student has failed to use it ethically, right? You cannot ban a tool just because the student has failed to attribute it or the student has failed to verify the use of AI. What is important in this particular regard is to make sure that you verify the output of AI. That's where the human aspect comes into. I'm not for banning any tools. In actual fact, these tools have made my life easier. From the research that we've shown you from Elsevier, 63% of the researchers have actually said the use of AI have improved the quality of their work. Right, 63% of the researchers, they attribute the quality of their work to have been improved by the AI tools. So there's no pedagogical grounding or basis for us to ban our tools. Right. Any other comments? Colleagues from MNG, can you please share our contact details and our social platforms and information for those who want to contact us after this session? Right. If are there any comments? I see there are guys attending from Zimbabwe. Tendai James Mapanga is very excited to be on this platform. Anything to say there, Mr. Mapanga? Right. There's a question coming through. It says,
Oh yes, sorry, Doctor. It was quite an insightful presentation. And the one takeaway that I picked up is that there's always need to disclose. And the fact that a supervisor is not supposed to take my work and put it on AI without my consent. That is very, very insightful. And I think it's going to help quite a lot of supervisors whenever they are supervising some dissertation. Thank you so much, Doc.
thank you so much, Mzaya. Thank you so much for joining out from Zimbabwe. Right. There is a question here that says, isn't the university supposed to share AI policy with postgraduate students in those workshops they normally hold for information sharing purposes? Because other universities do not talk about the usage of AI and its implications, making students very reluctant to disclose how they use these tools in the processing of developing theses and dissertations. I'll tell you from experience, the greatest problem that we have when it comes to disclosure is the attitude of the colleagues within the departments, right? Is the attitude, the negative attitude, the stigma that the colleagues perpetuate in the departments, in the university space. I mean, the senior colleagues mostly, they have that gatekeeping role to say, I don't want AI, I don't want anything to do with AI. And when you come up with that attitude, you actually um, stopping people or stopping students from disclosing, of which disclosure is a good thing because it allows the engagement, open discussion to ask, how did you get there? And I found it very, very, very helpful that each and every time where my student disclose that they've used AI, and I ask them, how did they get to come up with such a good work? They actually take me through that process. For me, it's actually a learning curve. I've actually learned to do a lot of platforms, to navigate a lot of platforms through my student who have disclosed tools that I did not know. And I've actually come to learn those platforms. So I think disclosure is a very important aspect. And I think as academics and supervisors, mostly we need to change our attitudes towards AI tools. If we do that, we'll actually learn a lot from the students themselves, because I agree and I know that my students know more AI tools than I do. So it's very important for us to actually open up that conversation for students to disclose and encourage disclosure and transparency. Right. Do we still have any other questions, comments before we call it a day? I want to re-emphasize that every Saturday between 10 and 11, we are at it. Today we were talking about ethics. Next week, we're going to be talking about um, other things. All right, we'll share with you what we're going to be talking about next week. But I'm sure next week next week we'll be doing using ChatGPT and other platforms, practical steps of writing, developing your research topic, your research questions, and your problem statement for your thesis, for your dissertation. So join us. By the time we reach December, you would have your complete dissertation done. Get your laptop ready. We will be doing a live stream developing those things with you, right? Get your work ready, right? Email us the presentation. We'll share the presentation for you. Another one is saying, Jack, the main issue is not the use of AI in itself, but rather the attitude of laziness in it unlocks in students who leave it to AI without reviewing and verifying the output of their work. Right. I agree with you. The problem here is if people are not disclosing, right? If students are not disclosing, that means there is something that's stopping them from disclosing, right? It could be the university policy, or it could be the attitude of the colleagues, or it could be the fear of being penalized. So it's the role is upon the supervisor to bring everybody to ease, to say, use AI, but disclose. Make people feel at ease to use these technologies. Give them the leeway to navigate around these tools. Don't put a cap to say 15%, 20%, 35%. Allow them to develop whatsoever they want to use, right? I don't think AI promotes laziness. I don't want to believe that AI promotes laziness, because for you to develop a good introduction from AI, it takes you time. It takes critical thinking. It takes prompting. The introduction developed, you see from next week's session where we're developing the research questions, the topic, and the problem statement. You see that you need to be a good researcher for you to come up with something that is credible, that won't be questioned. Right, you will really need to be a good researcher. So you see from our next week demonstration, do not miss that session. You need to participate and understand that session, right? So we'll share, if you've been attending today, you share, you receive the link for next week. Live again, will be live on this platform, right? We will be demystifying a lot of myths about around AI, but moving from next week, we'll be doing practical sessions. We will be developing every aspect of your research project. If you don't have a research topic, by the end of the session, you will have a research topic. If you don't have research questions, by the end of the session, you have research questions and your problem statement. Based on ethical approaches, we'll demonstrate for you. Come prepared next week and don't miss that session. You're going to enjoy and love it. If there are no other questions, I think we've reached the end. I'm not sure if we have anything from the guys from our office in MNG at Durban. Right, if there are any inputs or comments or any insights that you want to add to us, you can write to us if you have any questions at info.mgresearch.co.za. You can give us a call. You can visit MNG Research website. Right, we do trainings in universities, in departments. If you want us to come and train your students, if you want to train us to come and train your academics, your deans, your what, you name it, we are available to do that. We can give you some training at any given time. Do not hesitate. Be in touch with us and contact us whenever you feel like we need to do. Another thing that I want to emphasize before I close up, in the sessions that are coming, we're going to be developing proposal templates, right? A proposal template. We'll take a proposal template from Mancosa, then we write the proposal in the session and complete it for the students in Makosa. So get the word out there. We take the UJ template, the proposal template. In that session, we write it, we develop it, use AI tools demonstrating, and we complete it. So there's a lot in store for us in this series of workshops. Spread the word out there and we'll be advertising and enjoy. Right, colleagues from MNG,